What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the name Ramses? Is it the god of the desert, Ra, or the second largest pyramid in Egypt? Maybe it's a famous Egyptian actor. However, in this video, we'll talk about the most powerful pharaoh in ancient Egypt, Ramses the Great. Join us as we take you through his life story. Pharaoh Ramses the Great was born in 13th century BC in the Egyptian city of Thebes. He was the third pharaoh of the 19th dynasty and ruled from 1279 to 1213 BC. During his reign, he expanded the empire's borders to their greatest territorial extent. His empire stretched to the north of the Levant, to the south of Nubia, and to the east to the borders of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Despite being so wealthy, Ramses II wasn't afraid to get down and dirty on the battlefield. In fact, he's been called the warrior pharaoh because he led many military campaigns. Under his rule, the Egyptian army won several battles, defeated foreign invaders, and reclaimed lost territories. In addition to his military campaigns, Ramses also built numerous temples and monuments throughout his empire. One of his most famous constructions is the temple complex at Abu Simbel, which features 4 gigantic statues of himself. He was also responsible for building several obelisks, including the largest one in Egypt, which stands over 100 feet tall. Additionally, Ramses commissioned the construction of a number of smaller temples and chapels dedicated to various gods and goddesses of the Egyptian pantheon. These included the goddess Hathor, whom he worshipped as his patron deity, as well as the gods Amun, Ra, and Ptah. He also built several shrines and altars throughout his empire as part of his efforts to promote the worship of these deities. Finally, Ramses built numerous palaces and administrative buildings throughout his empire, including the palace at Medum, which served as his official residence during much of his reign. These structures were not only meant to serve practical purposes, but also to display the wealth and power of the Egyptian state. Overall, the building projects undertaken during Ramses' reign left an indelible mark on the physical landscape of Egypt and helped to solidify his legacy as one of the most powerful and influential pharaohs in history. Let's dive into the fascinating life of Ramses, a royal upbringing. Ramses II was born in 1279 BC in the Egyptian city of Thebes, located in the Nile Delta. His birth name was Uzurmatra, which means he who has risen in justice. At the time, Egypt was ruled by his father, Setwai, and his mother was Queen Tuya. While there is some debate surrounding the identity of his parents, what is certain is that Ramses had a privileged upbringing. He was the firstborn son and received the finest education available to him. This included instruction in the arts of war, diplomacy, and religion. From a young age, it was clear that Ramses had the potential to be an outstanding ruler. He was intelligent, charismatic, and had a strong sense of justice. His teachers recognized his abilities and took great care to ensure that he was well prepared for the responsibilities that would one day fall upon him. In addition to his intellectual pursuits, Ramses also received extensive training in the martial arts. This was necessary as the pharaoh was expected to defend his people from any who would do them harm. As such, Ramses learned how to fight with various weapons and also studied military strategy and tactics. By the time he came of age, he was more than capable of leading his armies into battle, the rise to power. Upon his father's death in 1256 BC, Ramses II ascended to the throne of Egypt and became the new pharaoh. At just 14 years old, he inherited a vast empire that stretched from the Levant in the north to Nubia in the south. Despite his young age, Ramses was more than ready to take on the responsibility of ruling over his people. The young pharaoh wasted no time in asserting his authority. He quickly set about consolidating his power and eliminating any potential threats to his rule. This included dealing with internal factions within the kingdom as well as external enemies. One of the first things Ramses did was to reaffirm the supremacy of the Egyptian state. He made it clear that he would not tolerate any challenges to his authority, and that those who opposed him would be dealt with swiftly and decisively. This sent a clear message to both his subjects and to any potential foreign invaders, that Egypt would not be taken lightly. In addition to asserting his dominance, Ramses also worked to improve the lives of his people. He implemented a series of reforms aimed at making Egypt a more prosperous and stable place. This included investing in infrastructure projects, promoting trade and commerce, and ensuring the safety and security of his subjects. These measures proved to be successful, and Ramses was able to establish a reputation as a benevolent and compassionate ruler. The military campaigns. Now that Ramses was firmly established on the throne, he turned his attention to the outside world. He launched a series of military campaigns that would take him all the way from the Levant to Nubia. During these campaigns, Ramses faced many challenges, but he was always able to prevail in the end. He was a skilled military leader, and his troops were well trained and equipped. Ramses was also blessed with good fortune, as he was able to avoid major defeats. The victories of Ramses were not just military in nature. They also had a significant political and diplomatic dimension. Through his conquests, Ramses was able to secure Egypt's borders and protect his people from foreign invaders. He also made alliances with other rulers and expanded trade routes. These diplomatic successes allowed Ramses to bring stability and prosperity to Egypt, building a legacy. In addition to his military and political accomplishments, Ramses was also a prolific builder. He constructed massive temples and monuments throughout his empire that are still standing today. Some of his most famous constructions include the temple complex at Abu Simbel, which features 4 gigantic statues of himself, as well as the obelisk at Heliopolis, which stands over 100 feet tall. Ramses also built several palaces and administrative buildings, including the palace at Medum, which served as his official residence for much of his reign. But Ramses' building projects were not limited to just stone and mortar. He also commissioned works of art and literature that celebrated his accomplishments and the glories of Egypt. This included paintings, sculptures, and hymns that depicted him as a god-king. Ramses also sponsored festivals and other public events that showcased the wealth and power of the Egyptian state. Through his patronage of the arts and public events, Ramses was able to create a cultural legacy that would last for centuries. Family life. Despite his many accomplishments, Ramses was a human being with both strengths and weaknesses. He was known to be quick-tempered and was not afraid to use violence to achieve his goals. He also had a complicated personal life. Throughout his long reign, he had many wives and children, but not all of his relationships were happy. One of his most famous wives was Nefertari, whom he married early in his reign. Together they had 6 children, 2 of whom went on to rule as pharaohs after Ramses's death. However, Ramses also had a number of other wives and concubines, many of whom lived in his vast palace complex at Medum. Not only was Ramses known for his many wives, but also for his numerous building projects. During his reign, he constructed several temples and monuments throughout Egypt, some of which are still standing today. Later, years and death. As Ramses got older, he began to slow down and spend more time in his palaces. However, he remained active in politics and continued to issue edicts and decrees throughout his old age. Eventually, though, his health began to fail, and he died in 1213 BC at the age of 90. He had reigned for 66 years, longer than any other pharaoh before or after him. When Ramses died, he left behind a legacy that would last for millennia. His accomplishments in war, building, and diplomacy had made him one of the most powerful and influential pharaohs in history. Even his enemies had to admit his greatness, and his statue was erected in his honor in the very city he had once besieged. his enduring legacy. To this day, Ramses' accomplishments continue to inspire awe and wonder. His statue remains a symbol of strength and power, while his buildings are testaments to his ability to dream big and to execute his plans with precision. Ramses was truly a great pharaoh, and his legacy will never be forgotten. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed learning about the warrior pharaoh Ramses the Great. If you want to learn more about ancient Egypt, stay tuned for more videos.